Hi, my name is Shelley Manning. Today I'm going to teach you how to completely heal your arthritis in 21 days or less using nothing but simple diet and lifestyle changes. Everything I teach you is based on scientific studies from some of the most respected institutes in the world. But the real secret comes from an old mysterious woman I met in my travel in Southeast Asia. Now, imagine your arthritis completely vanishing right this moment. If in a second your pain and stiffness melted away, and all your joints all of a sudden functioned like a well-oiled machine. Like a magic wand was waved, you'd be able to jump up from your chair and run around the room like a kid. And imagine that you never had to suffer as much as a pinch of arthritis, stiffness, or pain ever again. I know this sounds impossible now, but bear with me because sometimes miracles happen. And this is exactly what happened to me in a location I least expected. It was a gift from a woman on the other side of the world. From the kindness of her heart, she took pity on my suffering and taught me how to completely reverse my arthritis. This kind act was probably no big deal for the mysterious woman because arthritis is almost non-existent where she comes from. And even if people were to develop the disease, everyone would know exactly what to do. She helped hundreds of people in addition to me. Extremely quickly, it immediately worked. Easily, it required only minimal effort. Permanently, I never suffered again. Today, I want to do the same for you. I'm going to pay the gift forward, take you by the hand and lead you step by step through the 3-step strategy of 1. Relieving your pain and stiffness today. 2. Permanently ridding you of the underlying cause of your arthritis. 3. Rebuilding the damage already done to your joints. All naturally without the use of prescription medications that only make your condition worse in the long haul. Now, you may have heard there is no cure for arthritis. And this is absolutely true when it comes to the traditional medical system. But in other parts of the world, where Western medicine is not practiced, arthritis is almost non-existent. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how all this started. It's shameful, but when your husband leaves you on your 56th birthday, which also happens to be Valentine's Day, it really gets your goat, doesn't it? Should I blame him? I don't know. I guess I was not so easy to live with back then. Plus, I got my sweet revenge later, as I'll tell you in a second. You see, I met Andrew when we were both in college. Shortly after we got married, I began to develop rheumatoid arthritis. Things got worse. Carrying 2 children and being immobile due to my diseases, I added on a lot of weight in the next 10 to 15 years. That put extreme strain on my knee joints, leading to additional osteoarthritis in my early 40s. It didn't help that I worked in a small office sitting in front of a computer all day long. When every move you make feels like torture, you tend to avoid moving. This is probably the number one mistake us who suffer from arthritis make. This is also one of the main reasons obesity is twice as common among people with arthritis than the general public. I was no exception. Sometimes when the arthritis flares were the worst, I would lie in bed for days and days. Andrew wanted to go to gatherings or take a trip, but I couldn't go with him. I remember on our 22nd wedding anniversary, we planned to go to an old famous 5-star restaurant that was on the 2nd floor. I just couldn't walk up the steps, and we ended up eating pizza down the street. This is a sad reality for a young woman in her early 50s. These were supposed to be our golden years. Many women our age dread their husbands running off with a younger, friskier woman. Well, Andrew got a friskier woman, but she was actually 2 years older than me. I was devastated. What an asshole dumping his wife of 31 years in her misery and pain. Andrew left the house immediately after telling me the grave news. He had already packed a suitcase, and I assume he drove straight over to his whore. I just sat frozen at the kitchen table in our big house. I couldn't cry, couldn't really process what was happening. And the thought that came to me over and over again was, how am I going to function on my own? The next day, I called out of work saying I was sick. I'd done that a million times due to my arthritis. But then some kind of insanity hit me. You see, I always wanted to travel to Asia, and as I was drowning my sorrow while surfing the internet, an ad popped up for a cheap last-minute flight and hotel to Hong Kong, leaving the next day. Before I could think about the pain of flying across the world, I bought the ticket and began packing. I thought it couldn't be more painful than staying in my house. I was wrong. Although I'd popped 12 of the strongest painkillers I had, I didn't sleep a wink in the small, uncomfortable airplane seats. When we finally descended in Hong Kong after 16 hours of flying, I didn't think I could walk off the plane. As if that wasn't enough, little did I know that the hotel they put me in was far away from the major tourist or business areas. I was the only Westerner in sight. It truly felt like authentic China. Now here comes the important part. How a cup of tea changed my life. After tossing and turning, trying to sleep for about 12 hours, I decided I should get some kind of refreshment. More tired than I had ever been in my life and tortured with pain, I limped out of the hotel and sat down in the first restaurant I found. Then something weird happened. An older Chinese woman came over to me, and without saying a word, she poured me a cup of her special Chinese tea. Then, before I could order, she brought me a bowl of strange-smelling soup. And as suddenly as she'd appeared, the woman disappeared without a word. Well, what else could I do other than drink the tea and eat the soup? After all, I was starving. Then the most amazing thing happened. Before I knew it, my body felt better than I could remember. For the first time in years, my joints loosened up, my pain took a coffee break, and I had energy like I was running on rocket fuel. It was like my arthritis was completely cured on the spot. As I was enjoying the last sip of the soup and my newfound freedom, the mysterious woman came up to me from behind and asked in broken English, "Now, how do you feel?" Believe me when I say, I didn't just thank her. I wanted to kiss this old woman. Her name was Janerdquo. As we began to chat, she explained what had just happened to me. You see, what I didn't know was that it was no ordinary restaurant. People from all over Hong Kong went there for a meal, but the food was actually made with specific healing ingredients depending on each person's condition. Janerdquo told me she came from a small village in southeast China. She immediately recognized my arthritis and knew exactly what ingredients to throw into her tea and soup to give me instant relief. What she told me next put me on a track toward 100% arthritis relief. You may already know that arthritis is the most common chronic disease in the Western world, more common than heart disease and type 2 diabetes. Over a third of Westerners develop arthritis at some point. But where Janerdquo comes from, nobody suffers from arthritis. Their healing herbs, lifestyle, and diet are so integrated in their society that most Western diseases don't exist. When Janerdquo moved to Hong Kong, she noticed how her and other people from her area began to develop the diseases well known in the developed world. As they developed lifestyles similar to those of the Western world, the diseases that plagued the Western world began to plague them. This is a proof that arthritis is actually caused by lifestyle rather than genetic predisposition. Janerdquo opened up her little restaurant so that her friends and neighbors could have access to their previous normal, healthy lifestyle. Over the years, her restaurant has become known in Hong Kong as a place of healing, and people all over Hong Kong and the world seek her out. She's had offers to branch out, build a huge restaurant in the center, or even move to the USA, all costs paid. She would never have to worry about money again. But true to her humbleness, she refused and stayed in her little restaurant. And then came the promise. I ate at Janerdquo's every day of my trip, and every day my pain got less and less severe. After 10 days, I wouldn't even feel like I had arthritis at all. But even more importantly, I squeezed every drop of wisdom that I could possibly get out of Janerdquo, and she was more than happy to share it with me. A couple of days before I left, she made me give her a promise. She said since there were so many people suffering like me in the USA, I should go back and teach them everything I had learned. Go and help those still suffering. She made me promise. There was just one major problem with trying to cure arthritis in the USA. Many of the ingredients and recipes Janerdquo used were native to her area, and when I got back home, I couldn't find everything I needed. So, just like Janerdquo's people, when I got back to my Western lifestyle and diet, my arthritis began to worsen again. And there began my final battle. I began to research the nutritional properties of the ingredients Janerdquo used. I spent literally thousands of hours in front of the computer analyzing different plants and herbs. And this brought me to a shocking discovery. When researching the ingredients Genericquo used and their Western counterparts, I came upon study after study that had actually tested those ingredients for arthritis, and these studies proved their amazing healing powers. But for some reason, the Western medical system has silenced these studies, so the general public does not know their results. I guess a $2,000 annual medical bill to treat each arthritis patient is a good motivator for the corrupted pharmaceutical companies. These studies furthermore strengthen my belief that everyone could cure their arthritis. Another shocking discovery was indeed how easy it is to cure arthritis. Surprisingly, I didn't need to make a huge diet or lifestyle changes to make this work. I still eat 90% of all my favorite foods. I still go to all my favorite restaurants. And I still cook all my favorite recipes, only with small adjustments. My local health food store had all the herbs I needed. Not exactly what Genericquo used, but when I understood what she was doing, I could make adjustments. And then came the big test. When I came back from Hong Kong, my friends and family were amazed by my recovery. Since many of them also suffered from arthritis, they were anxious to try out my newfound healing program. For weeks, I had a full house of people at every meal. I became somewhat of a mini Genericquo in my community, and thanks to her, almost everyone experienced the same amazing recovery that I did, very often immediately. The best part is it worked for all types of arthritis: osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, fibromyalgia, gout, and every other type of arthritis I've ever come across. Sometimes a little adjustment was needed in the strategy, but most often the exact same thing worked for everyone. But my true passion isn't cooking, it's teaching. So I decided I'd invest most of my time educating anyone with open ears on how they could do this themselves. I finally quit my job and opened up a little health consultant practice, guiding hundreds of arthritis patients on how to heal themselves. It was amazing to watch strangers crawl in one day and run on the spot a week later. Truly a blessing to be allowed to take part in their healing. Then I met Nick. Retired heart surgeon, he was quite skeptical to take advice on healing his arthritis from an office lady. But he followed my guidance to a T, and within 3 weeks he was skiing in Aspen, Colorado, something he hadn't been able to do for over 20 years. I guess he looked at me as a healing angel, and our romance began to develop. We got married within a year of our first session. And finally, my devilish, sweet revenge moment came. I didn't plan it. I hadn't even thought about my ex-husband for months. But there he was on his way to some boring meeting in New Jersey, right when Nick and I were heading out to honeymoon in Venice, Italy. I'd lost so much weight I was wearing size 4 jeans. Looking 20 years younger, shining in love, and on my way to Europe. Poor Andrew hardly recognized me. I almost felt sorry for him, hulking around like a 5,000-year-old dinosaur. Now the problem was, Nick wanted to travel all the time. And although it had been my dream my whole life to take 2 or even 20 years to explore the world, I couldn't let go of my mission to bring my arthritis knowledge to the world. It was too important. And to do that, I believed I had to keep my consulting office open. Then the real breakthrough happened. I got hooked up with the team at Blue Heron Health News. It's a publishing company with the sole mission of educating as many people as possible about natural health alternatives. These folks have helped millions of people to rid themselves of various diseases, oftentimes like arthritis, considered completely incurable by the Western world. Christian Goodman, the founder of Blue Heron Health News, begged me to bring my knowledge to the masses. With my teaching experience of the Blue Heron team and my knowledge on healing arthritis, we could create a solid strategy to beat arthritis and publish it online. Wow, what an opportunity to be able to help millions of arthritis sufferers directly. And doing that from my laptop anywhere in the world. Introducing the 21-day step-by-step arthritis strategy. It's like you've booked a daily session with me and we're sitting in my office. For 21 days, I'll take you by your hand and lead you through the exact next step to overcome your arthritis. Each day, I give you a mini step to add into your overall strategy. It may be to cut 1 ingredient of food, add in 1 type of vitamin, or do 3 minutes of specific exercises I teach. Applying only minor changes to your life, you'll experience major change in your pain and flexibility, sometimes immediately, like happened to me. The steps are backed up with the exact teachings from Genericquo, as well as 47 scientific studies from all over the world. So you can be sure this is no mumbo-jumbo. Here are just a few examples of what you'll learn